Inspire is sponsored by Kansas Furniture Mart, using furniture to inspire conversation. And by the Blanche Bryden Foundation.
The Friends of KTWU, honored to support programs and services that enrich the lives of our viewers.
And the Raymond C. and Marguerite Gibson Foundation.
Coming up on Inspire, women in Hollywood are still underrepresented in behind-the-scenes roles. Why is this the case, and what are ways to get more women involved in those roles? A look at challenges for women in the film industry. Stay with us. To Inspire. It's an honor to be here with my Inspire co-hosts. We got Betty Lou Pardue and Leslie Florange sitting down the table from me, and we're so glad that you're here as well. Today we're going to talk about a very important issue impacting women.
The Me Too movement made people aware of the lopsided power dynamics between men and women in Hollywood. But there are still fewer women directors, writers, producers, executive producers, editors, and cinematographers than men.
This year, UCLA released its annual Hollywood Diversity Report and found that women are less than 22% of directors and 33% of film writers. Joining us to discuss this topic from Madrid, Spain, where it's 10 o'clock, is Christina Parks, director, writer, and executive producer at Assertion Films, and Sue Vickery, a little closer to home in Mound City, who is president at Heartland Films Incorporated. We are so thrilled that you both would join us on Inspire. And each of you, will you please, let's start with you, Katrina. What got you interested in the film business?
Well, it was somewhat accidental, I would say. I was always drawn to art, and it was actually, I was a student at the University of New Mexico, and I was working for an artist. And as kind of a outside activity, we went to a small railroad museum. And I learned about the subject of my first documentary, The Harvey Girls, who were one of the first all-female American workforces. And I said, you know, someone should make a film about this. And at that time, I had no filmmaking skills, wasn't, you know, planning to do it myself, but no one stepped up. And so eventually, when I learned that there were still Harvey Girls left that I could interview, I showed up with a camera, and that was kind of how I got my start. And eventually, you know, I realized this is an amazing, you know, way that you can explore subjects that you're interested in, and possibly making a living doing it. So that's kind of how I dove in.
Oh, that's excellent. Now I want to see the Harvey Girls. How about you, Sue?
Mine is, I say, equally interesting. When my girls went off to college, one day I said to myself, who do I want to be the second half of my life? And I was 48 years old, and within an hour I was signed up to film school. So wow. what I did was I said, you know, documentary making, independent filmmaking. I Googled it. 10,000 hits later, the very top hit was New York Film Academy. So I thought, well, I'll just get on their site and see what they've got to offer. And they had a 1-week boot camp in the fall of that year, and this was about a year after 9/11. And I thought, well, I could probably afford to be away for a week from work. So I signed up for it. And five months later, I had to pay the second half of my tuition. And I thought, oh, is this stupid? Is this a waste of my money? And, and so I sent my daughters an email and I said, what do you think? Should I do it? Is it blah, blah, blah? And my oldest daughter said, Mom, go for it. So off I went to New York City, and as a 48-year-old, and learned how to make a 16 millimeter 3-minute film, non-dialogue film in New York City in 1 week's period of time. So that was the beginning, and guess what? 20 years later, I'm still making films.
Fabulous.
How did an experience like that change your life, Sue?
Well, you know, what it really did for me, I think, was it brought a voice to the soul of who I am. And the first film that I made was called Homelessness and the Power of One. Took me 3 years to make a 10-minute film.
Wow.
But I met our nation's homeless from Harlem to Skid Row, across the country through 15 cities. Wow. And so just like Katrina, I had to learn how to turn a camera on, what are the steps and processes of making a film. And I knew nothing. Did not know what I was doing from point A to point Z. But 3 years later, guess what? I had a 10-minute film that premiered, and this will probably make me cry. It premiered 10 days after Katrina hit New Orleans.
Oh,
and
wow.
So the homelessness was an international conversation. And I've been planning that premiere for 5 or 6 months. I was still out in DC doing editing when Katrina was hitting New Orleans. We had standing room only in our audience, and people from New Orleans already up in Kansas City in our audience. And we had put up a second screen. We raised $30,000 that night at the premiere. This is his first film. I'm 50 years old at this point.
Wow.
And the film went on to screen across the United States, and it raised $200,000 for shelters. And I'm like, this is freaking magical.
Yeah.
And totally my destiny. So I've never been able to get out of it since. Here I am, as I said, 20 years later, still got cranking out projects.
So did you stop working and just focus solely on this, or you're doing both? You're
doing both. Yeah, we have a family business in Nevada, Missouri, and I've been employed there for 35 years as CFO. So the cool thing about it, though, my father died, so I had to step into the business, was I learned all these small business skills, which equates into making a film, because every film really is like running a small business.
Sure.
Lots of business decisions to make, financial and otherwise. So it really was the perfect collision for me for left brain, right brain.
Yes.
And once my voice was spoken, I wrote the script, I had original music made for the film. It's just a journey. It's an adventure of no return, honestly, is what it is. And it's very, very addictive. So
Well, this is divinity for sure. Let's talk a little bit about the diversity. We actually have a clip here that explains a little bit about it. If you guys could talk about the need for more diversity with women in filmmaking.
Well, yeah, for sure. I think definitely the person who's behind the camera, or who's written the script, or who's putting the team together, they have a point of view. So if you don't have diversity in those positions, your stories are going to be skewed in a particular way. So, whether it's historical stories, which I'm really have been very interested in telling, if all the history books are, written by men, you would assume that women really weren't active throughout time. But when you take a different voice and you look a bit deeper, you find that really there's a lot more ways in which women have been involved throughout time than we ever really anticipated or knew.
It seems to me, I was thinking about this with coaches in football, and that in the NFL there are all of these white coaches and very few black coaches, so there's not a lot of diversity, despite the fact that there are a lot of African American players. And what occurred to me is that all of these coaches know each other, they played together, and so they just like being together. I mean, is that sort of the same thing when film? All these directors, executive producers, they all kind of, it's like a club, and so women just don't really get into that club very easily. I'm wondering, is that fair?
Yeah,
So
I think that's for sure the case. I think there's other practical barriers to women entering that are maybe even more easier to address than kind of the club mentality that you're talking about. I mean, I think a lot of women, and this is true of women in across the board in industries, there's a real problem with lack of affordable childcare. And women are still, in many cases, we're the primary caregivers, and it's a wonderful thing, of course, but it does take time. Yeah. And so, if you live in a society that doesn't have, childcare accessible for all at a affordable price, it's very hard for women to go into something creative like the film industry that requires extremely long hours and is in some ways just naturally not the most stable thing.
Let's get into that clip. So let's take a look and a listen to this work.
The S3E4 filling station is located 3 miles east of the city of Luther, Oklahoma. And Luther is about 20 miles outside of Oklahoma City. The S3E4 filling station was the only African-American owned filling station on Route 66 in the country.
See, that's Miss S3E4, that's her dad, that's her mom, brothers and sisters, that's her grandmother.
Aunt Elizabeth ran the filling station with my uncle Ulysses, and they ran it together there for 18 years. And she, after my uncle passed away, she ran it for about another 20 years.
She ran the filling station. She had other little snacks and things around this counter right here. I can remember she had a big, it was a pop machine, Coke machine or something that was behind that counter. And if you came in to buy pop, you know, she had to raise the top up and get out there, and it was cold pop.
The Jim Crow era was very tough. And after the 1921 race massacre, because they were aware of the station and the homestead, they were able to stay on the grounds there for some period of time until they could get themselves on their feet and find out where they could go, you know. It was more than just a filling station. It was actually a part of the local community. Aunt Elizabeth had to be a very strong woman. She was a local school teacher. You know, she graduated from the local HBCU there, Langston University, went on as one of the first 5 African Americans to attend Central State College.
And this is the award, but there were 5 blacks that integrated UCO, yeah, and she was one of the 5.
S3E4 family started a S3E4 filling station foundation. We want to reopen the filling station as an interpretive center, a museum of sorts that can explain what it was like for people of color traveling Route 66 during the Jim Crow era.
Trina, that is such a powerful video. Wow. What we're going to do is we're going to continue our discussion after this break. Right now, we're going to feature a discussion with filmmaker Sam Haskins, president of Take 10 Incorporated, and ML Bass, principal marketing strategist, writer, and producer of ML Bass and Associates.
Now, when you see a film, do you kind of pick it apart and think what I would have done differently?
Yes, I think it's a professional hazard in a way. Yes,
I do it to my own.
Yeah, that's right.
Do you really?
Sometimes. Sometimes I used to, yeah. No, but yeah.
It helps you get a lot more out of all kinds of, things, TV, film, after you've been producing them. And of course, you see a lot of things I think maybe other people catch unconsciously, but yeah.
Do you like collaborating with others?
Yes, of course. Yeah.
Do you? Because I'm thinking it might be difficult because you have a vision of something and then somebody wants to go in a totally different direction. It might be hard to have those layer together.
Well, when you're working with clients, you have to be able to work with lots of people.
True.
And we've both done that, and aside from doing our own programs. But
well, what if it's your own program? Well, like you have a vision for something and someone else says, hey, I would like to take it in this direction. Do you say, my baby, I'm sorry?
Well, you learn to negotiate and you learn diplomacy through, producing over the years. That's very key things. If you don't even have those to start with, it's really hard to learn them. And I think you have to do that because you want to work, everything's about teamwork in producing. And I like teamwork. I like the whole deal of, but you can't please everybody all the time. You have to realize you're just going to take some hits and some people just aren't going to go along with you. But I want people's input, I do like people's input. But I think when we work with people, I think you probably felt this, they know how strong we are on what we're looking for. And they come on board to do that for us. But if they have, some input to give us, they'll do it because both of us are open to it. And we were open to it with each other. We also collaborated quite a bit.
And we're back. Ladies, on the last segment, we took a look at the fabulous work that you're doing, Katrina, the Route 66 documentary. I've got to say, where can we see that documentary? Where can we take a look at that?
I do have it's being broadcast through American Public Television on public television stations across the country, but you can choose to stream it from, if you go to the website, route66women.com.
Okay.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
I love that. I love that. And Sue, how about yours? Are we able to find information about your films as well there, or how can we find you?
Yeah, so I have a website, suevickery.com, and I think there's a link on there. I have a YouTube channel, so all of my films are live on my YouTube channel for the past 20 years, and we've screened on PBS and been on Amazon, but I make them just for public viewing, so they're all available on there.
How do you choose a subject, though? I know that you were excited about, or you've learned about, I know that excited is the right word, but interested. What piques your interest to make you want to make a documentary?
Well, what I can say is I think the subjects pick us. So on my first film, as I said, it was like a tap on the shoulder to explore, like you'd write a thesis or something on our nation's homeless. I never knew anyone homeless, had no connection to homelessness, but my curiosity was piqued. That once I stepped in and I gave it life and breath, I had to take it all the way to the end, and it was transformational for me. So since then, I've chosen sort of randomly, I guess my personality is a little random, so I choose things that either speak to me or are sort of an invitation, from the universe. I don't know. Projects keep coming, and sometimes I say no, but I'm just a curious human being like everybody else. So I really like the process of collaborating with people and then ultimately, leaving something behind for all of time. The jazz and blues film I made for Kansas City took me 5 years. 5 years from beginning to end, and because it was hard, and I knew my audience would be the jazz and blues musicians. So it was historical in nature. I had to get my facts right, did a lot of archiving. Well, what a gift. Now I see my name attached to that film, and I can't believe it. Can't believe I did it.
What's the title of the jazz and blues film?
It is Kansas City Jazz and Blues, Past, Present, and Future.
Awesome. How difficult is it to get backing? What are the steps to actually fund your films?
Well, it's not easy, especially if you're interested in, I think, subjects like Sue is, and I'm interested in telling diverse women's stories. So over the years, I've gotten better at. I might not say I'm excellent at it yet, but I've learned to write grants, and so I've figured out a way to support my work through writing grants, doing public programs while I'm developing the grants with or developing the films with historians, and you just have to be really creative and put together the pieces, and it takes time. As Sue has said, I think the Harvey Girls documentary, I filmed my first interviews in 1999, and the film premiered in Kansas City at the National Archives in 2013.
Wow.
So
patience.
Yeah.
Patience.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So,
for me, one of the smartest business decisions I made at the beginning 20 years ago was I created a production company that's a 501c3. So who knows why I did it, but it's been one of the smartest things I've ever done as far as raising money for films or people donating to projects. And I just had somebody reach out to me on social media and say, where can I go to donate to you? And I mean, just a few minutes ago, where can I go to donate to your films? So, you get a collection of things that you've done, put good stuff into the world. People, they love to be part of a moving, entity. And, you just sort of gather your tribe as you go along. I'm a big proponent of filming with women. I've done all female cast and crew films before. I bring all the women I can with me for, all the different expertises and stuff. It's just a journey of an adventure and joy. I'm so hooked on it.
That brings up a great point, the fact that you have so many women working for and with you. How can women mentor more young women in the industry, to get more women to join the industry, to fall in love with it the way that you all have. Tell us a little about what you think might work for that.
I early on, actually, when I was in graduate school, I'm one of the co-founders of a nonprofit called Cinefemme. That's CINEFEMME, and I founded that organization along with two wonderful colleagues, Sirpa Nelson and Michelle Cantor, and Michelle is the executive director now. And that organization really exists with the idea of mentoring filmmakers from diverse backgrounds, but with a focus on young women as well. And so we create programs, for example, fiscal sponsorship and networking opportunities for people who are starting out, but especially for young women.
Perfect. I think we have a clip that shows a little bit about mentoring in the film industry for women. Let's take a look.
When you ask about mentors, Sue, you're asking for it because you're my mentor, Sue. When I was 15 years old, growing up in Kansas City, Missouri, there weren't a lot of film opportunities. I was a real nerdy film kid. Full braces. I've had glasses my whole life, and I would make my dad drive me to these Wednesday night Independent Filmmaker Coalition meetings, in which I was the only 13-year-old in that building. And I got involved with this little organization called Women in Film, and Sue was on the board, and they gave me my first ever budget to make a short film when I think I was 15. And you know who handed me that check? Dee.
Did I read?
You did. You were the special guest.
Oh my goodness.
And so you literally handed me an opportunity, and Sue made it possible. And today's a very full circle moment, but it was also very full circle to have you play a part in my feature film, not only supporting me that whole path. You were the first person I told I wanted to do that to. And you said, yeah, do it this summer. And you know what? We did.
Boy, that brings tears to my eyes. We as women, we've all been mentored our entire lives, either by our mothers or by an older sister or a teacher or something like that. And that's really our gift back to the world. Everything, as she said, is full circle. And I was mentored over the years, and now I do a lot of mentoring. One of the things I do with Heartland Films now as a 501c is I executive produce a lot of films. So I give opportunities to new or starting or second filmmakers that can use the umbrella of Heartland Films to raise their money. And that's turned out to be a huge avenue of more creativity for me and others. And as I said before, I spend a great deal of time mentoring, and because I can, and I'm dedicated to it. And I'm all about raising up women creatives, and it's a collaborative effort. And I like to work with women.
We love
That's
you both,
awesome.
and thank
Love
you
that.
for working with us. We love Sue, we love Katrina. Thank you for sharing your depth of knowledge, and be sure and watch these. This is going to be a wonderful opportunity for women.
I'm inspired after the discussion that we had on today's show, because filmmaking is definitely not easy. What are some of your takeaways from the ladies?
I just love the fact that they wanted to do it, and that they didn't, it sounded like they weren't even the least bit worried that it was kind of a quote unquote man's world, because they just got into it. They were interested in a subject. What did it take to tell that story? I love that.
I was amazed at how long it takes to make some of these films. I mean, you think about Ken Burns and some of his documentaries and how long they take, but I'm still amazed. Like, where do you keep the film? How do you keep it fresh? Like, how do you make it so seamless so that it doesn't even seem as though you've been doing this over so long? So I was blown away by that.
I'm amazed that Sue's 48.
I know.
I'm like, You were
Well, she
48.
started that way, yeah.
When
The
she started. I
second
could
life.
not believe
Yeah,
that because
yeah.
I'm thinking at 50, like, I don't have energy to work on a project that long. That's like for 10 minutes. It's like, are you kidding me? But yet now she's mentoring all these ladies and she's still doing it herself. I'm like, oh my goodness.
Yeah,
and that was 20 some years ago.
Yes. And I love the fact that she's doing all the research, because look at that, so essential for one's reputation.
Right.
You did the research, you know, you have your facts, and you're presenting it as content that somebody can trust when they're looking at it.
Right. And I mean, the fact that she now is an executive producer, Sue, in giving other women an opportunity to make films that she helps them make. And being a 501c3 is brilliant, because that's a great way to get funding so that you can keep this dream alive and keep other women to be successful in film. I love it.
I hope it inspires other women in Northeast Kansas to want to get to know these ladies and say, how can I start the process? It's like, I've got a video camera and I've got ideas in my head. How do I actually get them out on film and get started? And where do I get my backing? I mean, to me, that's just so cool, because I love documentaries. I don't know that I have the patience to make one, but I definitely am just inspired to see their projects, and I can't wait to go online and check them out.
But just look around you. What things interest you? Like she was saying about the homeless, and then here came Katrina. So how timely that is, and it might not be timely at the time you're going to do it, but look how that evolved for her.
Right.
Well, and some things are evergreen. Jazz and blues in Kansas City will always be there. The fact that she put together a film, I mean, that's going to be so awesome to see.
I'm going to go check it out on YouTube. She said a lot of her films are on YouTube. Go check it out.
Yes.
I'll find it and send you the link.
Please do.
Well, ladies, that's all the time that we have today. If you'd like to watch this program again, visit us online at watch.ktwu.org.
And if you're so inspired to learn more about our guests, find out what's coming up on future shows, and get access to additional content, be sure to visit our website, www.ktwu.org/inspire.
Inspiring women, inspiring you, and inspiring creativity through film on KTWU. Thank you all for watching.
Inspire is sponsored by Kansas Furniture Mart, using furniture to inspire conversation, and by the Blanche Bryden Foundation.
The Friends of KTWU, honored to support programs and services that enrich the lives of our viewers.
And the Raymond C. and Marguerite Gibson Foundation.